Episode 3. Hello, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Dogman Encounters Radio. I'm Vic Cundiff, and I'll be your host as we listen to eyewitness encounters involving one of the most terrifying cryptids, Dogmen. Our guest tonight is Jonny Snoke. When John was growing up, people in his area warned him to watch out for the Beast of London Road. John thought this was all a joke. That is until when one night, the beast stepped out of a dark woods onto a road not 15 feet away from him. Tonight, John's going to share all the details of that encounter, as well as others he had. John, welcome to Dogman Encounters Radio. Thanks so much for coming.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure, man. I'm excited to get on here for a while.
For starters, growing up, what was the first occurrence you know of in your area that could possibly be attributed to Dogman activity?
Really, when I was younger, I mean, they're always told, like, not to go out after dark, stuff like that, and stuff about the boogeyman, and stuff to basically kind of scare kids into, not going too far into the woods. The first thing I can really say definitively about it was where I grew up at. There's a road called London Road, and there were always talk around when I went to school about the thing on London Road, and nobody really could tell what it was. All it was a dark shape that would chase your car. We would always go on that road and be like, yeah, whatever, blah, 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 blah. Thinking it was all just a joke, kind of like an urban legend type thing, like Bloody Mary or, the Crybaby Bridge, stuff like that. There was a couple of times where we would be driving, or we'd drive like real slow just to kind of push our luck a little bit if there was something, where something actually, we could see something like run up behind the car, and it would of course scare us every time. We'd freak out and, hit the gas and go as fast as we could. But the thing is, we would be going about 35, or we would, be going 35 normally, but then we'd kick up the speed to about 50 or 60 or faster than that, and it was still keeping pace with us. So we couldn't really explain that. And in that same area, though, that's where one of our friends had a horse farm, and they had, 5 or 6 horses, like all the time. One of my friends, her favorite one actually had passed away, had died, and this happened on a Friday, and they were burying it, and we dropped her off, and we could see the backhoe in the lot farther back, digging the big ditch for it, and we could see it laying out there. But that following Monday at school, she came in and she was crying. We could tell she'd been crying again. We're like, what's the matter, And she's like, my horse. And we're like, yeah, I'm sorry to hear about your horse, because she raised it since it was a foal. So she goes, no, something happened to it. And we're like, what happened to it? She's like, something dug up. And we're like, okay, yeah, something probably dug at where it got buried at, not the measure. She's like, no, something dug it up and pulled it out of the ditch, or out of the hole that we put it in, or that they put it in. And we were like, well, what would do that? And she was like, I have no idea. But whatever it was, it completely took all the guts and stuff out of it. It completely hollowed it out. And so we couldn't explain that. But the thing is, around there, the biggest thing you would have are like coyotes and stuff. And there was nothing. The coyote can't pull a full-grown horse out of a hole. To this day, I still don't know what does it. What did it?
That is strange. Do you know of any other strange things that happened on her farm back then? Were any of their animals attacked?
If it was, she didn't say anything. Like, we would occasionally hear about, some of their sheep disappearing, and other than that, we always just thought it was coyotes. One of my friends in that lived on the other side of the opposite direction of the one friend with the horse, she actually had 3 of her sheep disappear, come up missing one day, and I helped her dad look for him. We couldn't find anything. Later we saw, of course we saw, vultures circling down by this big creek, and there's the whole wood line along the creek. So we went down there to look around, and we ended up finding the sheep. The thing is, I grew up, raising like chickens and goats and all kinds of animals, and I know what, coyotes do. I know what raccoons do, all that. I've never seen that. I've seen it when we got down there to the creek, all three of the sheep were there, but all their wool was like pulled off in clumps and set aside in a pile. It was really neat for some reason. All their guts were pulled out and set in a pile. Thing is, two of the sheep were on the ground, and the third one was stowed up in a tree. There was a tree that was maybe 20 feet high, and about 8, 9 feet up, there was one of the sheep laying across a branch. That kind of freaked us out a bit, because I thought it was a big cat, to be honest with you. Because I always heard, leopards and stuff putting some of the animals they catch up in trees, so it kind of scared us quite a bit. We went back. But then later, my friend was telling me that night she was sitting on her porch, because they had a secondary porch on the upper story of their house. She said she was sitting up there watching the dogs chase the sheep around. I'm like, what, like coyotes? I figured coyotes were just chasing them around. She goes, no. She goes, these aren't coyotes. I'm like, well, what do you mean? She goes, no, when they get to the fence, they stand up, walk over, and hop over the fence, and then get back down on fours and chase them around. And we examined the fence where the sheep got out. We maybe like I said, like a coyote came in there, grabbed one, and took it off. No, these were fully grown sheep, because it was around fair time, because we were all in 4-H. And we looked all around. There was no way the sheep could have got out, and there was no way anything could have got in, because the fence was still tacked down to the ground, and all the posts were there. It wasn't like, part of it got loose and the coyote could go way up underneath there, or the sheep could force his way out. There was no way, and the gate was still locked. So
that is awfully strange. Yeah, when you saw the remains, when you saw the sheep up in the tree, I can't blame you for thinking big cat. That does sound like something they would do. Is there a history of strange activity in that area that stretches back in time before you were born?
I would imagine so. Any of the adults always talk about, said like the boogeyman. Mike and Dad always said, don't prick around after dark too long. You could go missing. And I thought it was just him trying to scare me. But then, like I said later, when I got into high school, I found out everybody was seeing stuff and hearing about things.
Did you ever hear about a person being attacked in that area back then?
Person? No. I have not personally heard anything, but I know a couple of my buds would get out of there, like when we would be daring the thing on London Road to come after you. Like you get out of the car and stand with your back to your car. And there was a couple of times they said they heard something like run on the pavement, and it sounded like their feet on pavement. Like running up behind the car. They always freaked out and jumped back in the car and took off.
Have there been any Bigfoot sightings reported in that area?
Again, I couldn't say yes or no. Like the area would seem yes, but it's in the southern part of Ohio, so yes, there are reportings and sightings down that way.
Yeah, southern Ohio with all the woods, there is a lot of activity down there. Please describe the topography of the area where these encounters happened, where your encounters happened.
The area was it was farmland that butted right up against the woods, and really heavily creeked area. It's mostly half farmland, like really big corn stalks, or cornfields, and really have a lot of forest. Like you'll have clear spots here and there for, farming, but then for the most part it's woods in between everything else.
That area down there is pretty hilly too, isn't it? A lot of up and down?
Yeah, like I was just getting ready to say that, there's times at night, if you're not careful, you'd swear you were if you're on top of some of the hills, I mean, you'll think you're on top, you're the only spot of land on the planet after that. There's just pitch black. You look over the top of a hill, and it's just black everywhere.
When all this strange activity was going on, John, in your area, how did your mom react to it? Did she just try to explain it away, or did she even know about it going on?
See, my mom and my dad both were kind of weird when it came to that stuff. I would watch sports, like Ends for Chess with Leonard Nimoy, all those shows, and it would scare me to death. It was I should have known better, but I still watched it. I got really scared. So she would go into the library, and we'd rent VHS videos and books on like Bigfoot and all these like monster books to show me it wasn't real, wasn't something to be afraid of. And my dad just kind of was like, I don't believe in that stuff. And that was it. Just simple as that. He's like, that stuff ain't real.
Yeah, that's a pretty typical response right there. How do you think she would have reacted if she knew they were real and worse than that in the area?
She would never let us outside. She wouldn't let us go outside at all.
Considering that you weren't attacked as a result of your encounters with them, do you think they're dangerous?
Well, in my honest opinion, I think they're a wild animal still, and I think they would hurt you if they felt threatened. I mean, you hear all the time about people getting, mauled by family pets. I can't imagine what a scared wild animal would do you? Especially if it's something, like I've seen, it's something that's, going to stand about 7 foot tall, who has claws and can easily do some harm. I mean, I wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of them.
Do you think they should be left alone, or do you want their existence proven?
I think I would honestly have to find one to prove they're real and leave them be.
Now that you know they're out there, can you go into the woods unarmed?
No. If I do, I am every little sound makes me spare out, and it just doesn't feel right. It feels like there's something always there, like watching you or hunting you. I mean, I feel better when we're deer hunting because I have, a shotgun or I have a bow. But if I'm like mushroom hunting or, just enjoying a walk in the woods, I mean, every little crack, every little noise, I mean, even if there's no noise, like on edge, I'm looking around. Figure out what's the fastest way to get back to my car and get out of there if I have.
That's probably a very good practice. Now that I've been into this for some time, I've already said publicly how it's funny. When you go out in the woods, at least for me, you'd swear there's a Dogman behind every tree.
Oh, yeah.
It's got a strange effect on you when you know they're out there like that. All right, John, please tell us about your encounters. Be sure to share every last detail about them you can remember.
Me and one of my exes, we were driving down in the southeastern part of Ohio. We had some friends that lived out there. We would drive out there, hang out till like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and then drive back. One night, we were driving back, and we had drove back a little early. We went there during the daytime, and the sun was setting. Actually, it just set. It was, in that twilight hour. So we're driving, and she drove this little tiny, I think it was a Dodge Neon. So we're driving along this back road, and it's barely like 1.5 lanes, if that. The area we're driving in it was solid trees on the other side. Except they were clear-cut back a little ways, so in case you did break down, you could pull off the road. We're driving along, and we see deer running across the road, like no more than like 20 feet in front of us. So we jam on the brake, or she jams on the brakes because she was driving. we skid to a halt, and the whole time we're sliding towards the deer, we could see them. They're like kind of shaking and they're panting real hard, like they've been running for a while. And we just kind of were like, all right, looks like we probably scared them more than they scared us. So we come to a stop, and deer had moved on, so we slid to the stop, and we slowly crept forward a little bit. And I'm like, all right, take it slow, because where there's one, or where there's a couple, there's probably going to be more running out, and we don't want to, hit one back down here because we have no cell service. As we run up, or as we go to where they were, I look up the rearview mirror, and I have seen more deer run across the back road behind us. Instead, something else runs out. Well, I could see a big red shape, and it probably wasn't red. It was more or less, it was just being illuminated from the brake light. And I see something from about maybe the middle of their thighs to about maybe halfway up its stomach. And it's sticking out with its right leg. So its whole body's kind of half cocked towards me, or towards us in the rear view. And it puts its hand down, taking one step into the road. And as it steps down, it puts its hand down. It doesn't touch. I don't think it touched the back of the car, but it was kind of putting its hand down so it doesn't run into the car. And it takes it. This is in one step. And then I see it, and it just quickly clicks out of the rear view as it's forward or steps on. So I look at it's honestly felt like forever, but I blink and I look for her, and she's pale as a ghost, and she's white. Her mouth is open. She's like, "What was that?" And I don't know. And she goes, "Seriously, what the F was that?" And I'm like, "I don't know." So I look over out the passenger side window, and I open the door and get out, which I look on now. I think that's really stupid, but I just had to be sure that's what I saw. And as I get out and look to where it was headed, I see there was on the road, they had that clear cut back. The thing is, it dropped down a little bit, and the weeds were up really, really high. Because it doesn't look like, it looks like they only mow about once a year, if that, in that area. But, so we walked down, so as I look towards the tree line where it was headed, I see two really big shoulders, part of a back maybe halfway up from about the middle of the back up. I see a big half-flat head with ears going up the wood. And it's just moving at its own pace. It's not like, it's not running, it's just kind of moving forward at a normal pace. And so then it dawns on me, where there's one of those, he knows that there's more around, and I'm standing here with my back to the way it came. So I jump back in the car, and she goes, seriously, what was that? And I'm like, I don't know, let's go. And we drive home. And the whole way home, we didn't say a word about it until we got in the driveway. I look over at her, and she just starts crying. And I'm like, what's wrong? And she goes, what was that? I'm like, I don't know. I really don't. And she's, I don't want to go back there. I'm like, we won't have to. And I've never been back to that same area since. But yeah, it was, even now, I mean, I still don't exactly know what to call it, except it reminded me of like the back shoulders of a werewolf that you would always see in the movies. It wasn't, I mean, and I know for a fact it wasn't some guy in a ghillie suit. I mean, I know what ghillie suits look like, and that's not what I saw. It was hair. It was tall, and it had hands. I mean, I remember, if I think of its eyes, I know exactly what its hand looks like. And that happened 10, 15 years ago, and I can still recall it to this day.
When you got out of the car and took a good look at it, by the way, you've got a lot more guts than I've got. I'd never do something like that.
Like I said, I just had to be sure what I saw. I mean, one of the things were like, really? I mean, that wasn't, no. that wasn't no, you know.
I'm impressed. When you got out and saw it walk across the road like that, and then jumped out of the car to have a better look, did any of its actions give you the impression that it might be more intelligent than a normal animal would be?
Well, for one, just because it put its, like, I'm impressed because it put its hand up to not run in the back of the car. I mean, I've stopped in the middle of the road and had deer running to the side of the car. I wasn't moving and the deer ran into it. So there is some thought there. And I think that if they're smart enough to keep hidden, then yeah, they're pretty intelligent.
You saw it place its hand on the car's trunk. How would you describe its hand? Did you see any claws or any long nails?
Yes. Actually, they had nails. Like you would honestly think like a stereotypical movie. You know, they had claws. They were just, like I said, they were red from the tail lights, but yeah, they were claws.
They were claws and not fingernail-like.
They might have been fingernail-like. I did see some reflection off of them from the red, but they were, you know, they were pointed.
Wow. Did you get they came to a point. Did you get an idea for how long they might be?
No, I didn't.
That's all right. As shocked as you were, I can't blame you. I don't think anyone can. When you got out of the car and saw the creature, the Dogman, from behind, you talked about its shoulders and how it was built. When you were looking at it like that, did it give the impression like Sasquatches do? You know how they look like they don't have a neck? With this thing, did it look like its head was sitting directly on top of its shoulders the same way, giving that no-neck appearance, or what?
No, you could tell that it had a neck, so it could probably turn its head left or right, but it wasn't like a human neck where our shoulders sit real low, and it was more square built. Like their whole body, the shoulders into the neck, into the head look like two squares just on top of each other. So you could tell that there was a neck, but it wasn't super definitive.
I'm impressed you were able to notice that much detail. Now, did you get a good enough look at it to see if its pointed ears that you mentioned were more on top of its head or on the sides of its head?
It was kind of a mix of both. I mean, they were really wide. They weren't like super wide, but they were cocked, I think, different. Kind of like, they honestly reminded me of like a pincher's ear. Like they were from the back. They remind me kind of like a shepherd's would sit kind of almost off kilter, like almost like a half X on the side and on the top of the head.
So they had kind of a cropped look like a pincher's ears have.
Yeah. Yeah, they were straight up.
Now, if it had a tail when you got out of the car to get a better look, would you have seen or noticed if it did have one?
The weeds were up really high where it went down this little embankment, so I didn't see a tail. No, like it went, off the side of the road, it went down a little bit where they had cut it back, and the weeds were up really high, and all I could see was about maybe the middle of the back up. So if it had a tail, I would not know.
Did you ever hear any sounds that it might have made?
The only sounds I really heard was that it crashed into the wood after the deer. That's all I heard. Like, I didn't hear any breathing. The only breathing I could hear was my own.
If you had to guess on how tall this thing was, what would you estimate? I
actually now drive a car just like the one she does. So when I measured it against my proportions, it would have stood over 8.5 feet tall. Because I measured it to where the bumper was hitting on me, where it would be hitting on it, and it would have been over 8 feet.
Wow, that's a big one. If it was that tall, what kind of weight estimate would you make?
I would say between 4 and about 600 pounds, because it wasn't fat at all. It was actually really, really built. It was really, I wouldn't say skinny, but it was definitely, built. There was no fat on it. There was no anything like that.
When you looked out that back window when it was lit up by the brake lights and it had that reddish glow you're talking about, and you saw its hand right behind the car, you say you saw it from about mid-thigh up. I take it from what you're describing, what you saw had a leg structure that was very similar to what you would expect a person to have, or a Bigfoot. It looked like it had a conventional knee, no canine type leg structure, correct?
Right.
All right. When you got out of the car, were there any strange smells in the air?
Strange smell? I didn't notice if there was any smell or anything at all.
After that incident, did you ever go back to that location and look for prints?
Not at all. No way. I was not wanting to go back there, and I still haven't went back to there.
I don't blame you. How close are you living now to that area where all this happened?
It's actually about an hour and a half. It's close, but not too close.
When you got out and took a look, did you ever see it turn around to look at you? From what you were saying, it sounds like it never did turn. It just kept its back to you and kept going.
Nope. It was just kept going after the deer. So that's what I've always thought, was just pushing those deer till they dropped from exhaustion, or maybe it was leading them into a trap or something.
So through the whole thing, it didn't seem to have any interest in you or your girlfriend whatsoever, just totally focused on the deer.
Nope, not at all. If I don't even think it would have really even minded if we were there or not, because just, like I said, I think it inconvenienced it by, we got in its way.
Well, you didn't seem to slow it down much, that's for sure, which I'm glad it didn't slow down and do anything to you.
Yeah.
Now, you've got another encounter with something that might have been one of these things. Please share the details of that with us.
All right, this encounter actually happened before the going behind the car. Anyway, me and the same girl and a couple of friends, we were out driving around like normal. We decided to pull off on one of the little back roads and just kind of hang out. And he had brought along some vodka, and we figured we'd just listen to music and, get drunk. So we pulled off on the road, and the road's like a really bad gravel road. This one here, this is, of course, clear cut back to where you didn't have to worry about maintaining the road hardly at all. So we find a little area that looks like kind of like a breakdown lane almost. Like it's around a bend. There's a bunch of gravel and stuff set up where to pull off the side of the road you could. So we pulled off there. And I remember the time of year because the honeysuckle bushes were blooming, and and I loved the smell. So we pulled off and we put the windows down, turn up the radio, and started drinking. And I didn't drink that night because, one, I did take vodka, and two, I had work in the morning, and I don't like going to work like that. So we're all kind of just hanging out, listening to the music, and a couple hours pass, and it's getting dark, and we could hear something behind us will be behind us since we're off the side of the road. There's a gigantic honeysuckle bush. I mean, it had to have at least been 10, 12 feet tall, and I don't even know how far back it went. But we're all sitting there having a good time, and we hear something crunching. Something getting closer and closer, and the snapping branches getting louder and louder. The guy that was with us, he threw the empty vodka bottle up into the bush, into that honeysuckle bush where the sound was coming from. So immediately got quiet. So we're like, all right, it's scared off. It's cool. Within like a minute or two, that bottle comes flying back, goes over top of us, because we're still in the breakdown lane where all the gravel is off the side of the road, and it smashes in the road. And that scares the hell out of all of us. We all freak out and jump in the car and we take off, going back the way we came. The thing is, going back the way we came, we had to stop in the middle of the road because there is now a really big branch laying in the road. And the thing is, he drove like a little tiny I think it was a Firebird Trans Am or one of the two. And it was his baby, and he did not want to even try and take it off the road to go around it. So me and him got out to move it. And so we each grabbed one half, or I grabbed one side, he grabs the other, and we couldn't lift it. We couldn't move it at all. So we ended up both getting on one side and just twisting it, pulling it up, spinning it to where we could buy. The whole time, like, we're sitting there doing that, and the whole time it acted like it acted like it was windy, because all we could hear was like branches like cracking and snapping and breaking, but there was no wind at all. There was a horrible, horrible smell that just came over everybody. Like, it almost burned your eyes and made you want to throw up. And it smelled like wet dog, rotten meat, and like animal and garbage. I mean, it was horrible. And so we're trying to choke back from puking and stuff and moving that, and we're scared and everything else. We finally spin this thing out of the road, and we jump in the car and take off when we get out of there. And the thing is, that branch, half of the tree, I can just say it's probably half of the tree, because it was fresh too, where it got broke off. Because the leaves were still, green, they weren't wilted, they weren't anything like that. There was no wind, and not to mention they cut the tree line back away from the road, and where you could see sky above it. I mean, there was no way that it just happened to break, happened to fall onto the road, like that. There was no way. Someone or something had to put it there.
If that branch was put there on the road, do you think it was Dogman that did it?
Yeah, that could have been one of them. That could have been a whole bunch of them. I mean, because we were getting breaks and cracks and snaps on both sides of the road. I mean, there was the side I was on, which was the passenger side, starting out. I mean, it was really, really loud. And the thing, like I said, the thing is, there was nobody out there. There was no one. I mean, like, we could have easily played off as, somebody was out here and they threw the ball back. No, there was nobody, period. And the thing is, it's starting to get dark, so, I mean, you couldn't see anything anyway. And I think specifically, if there was anything out there like it, they laid a trap.
If it was a group of dogmen that put that out on the road, do you think they put it there to keep you from leaving the area? Or do you think maybe they did that to keep other people out?
I don't know. Both of those could say yes. You could say yes that they were doing that to make sure we couldn't leave, but also they were doing that to make sure other people didn't come into that area.
Did you tell any friends or family about any of your encounters?
When we got back from the main sighting, the one I can say definitive what I saw, we told my friend's mom, my girlfriend at the time, her mom, and she just made fun of us the whole time. She made fun of us. She said, sure did, you guys are out there probably smoking pot or something, blah, blah, blah. And we were like, no, we saw something out there. And she's like, She goes, next time, tell Bigfoot I'm having a cookout next Sunday in the backyard. It wants to come, just come off us. So we just kind of didn't talk about it.
After getting a reaction like that, which most people do, unfortunately, I can't blame them or you for not wanting to share it with anyone else. Now, experiencing what you experienced, seeing what you saw, if you had to encounter one or the other out in the middle of nowhere, out in the woods, would you rather run into one of these things like what you saw or a Bigfoot?
Option C, none. Either way, I think you're going to be on losing side. I guess it would depend on the temperament of any of them. I would not like to run into any of them unless it was like 300 yards away and I was looking through a binocular and I was, beside sitting in my car where I could easily get away.
Going back to the encounter where the vodka bottle got thrown out into the road, when that happened, who did that scare the worst?
Who did that scare the worst?
That's right. You said it was you, your girlfriend, and two of her friends out there.
Yeah. I think we all kind of were scared the same because that was something we did not expect at all. And two, that takes some pretty good coordination. I mean, it wasn't that to throw something back. I mean, to throw something back. And the thing is, it easily hit us with that bottle, but it didn't. I mean, the fact that it threw it past, like over our heads, over the car, into the road, it was pretty much just saying, hey, get out of here, don't come back. How dare you throw something at me, I'm going to throw something back.
When you consider that it threw the bottle over where you were standing, when it could have thrown it right at you to hit you, and also when you consider when you were outside of the car with your friend moving that big branch with all the sound and the smell, there might have been a group out there right around you. The fact that you didn't get attacked then, are you open to the possibility that maybe that group wasn't necessarily as vicious as you might expect them to be just from their looks?
Yeah. So I look back on it now and say, yeah, I mean, they could have easily gotten us multiple times. And I do believe that there was quite a few of them because when we when we all got back to my girlfriend's house, we said our goodbyes to our friends that took off. She's like, I was worried about you guys moving that branch. I'm like, well, yeah, it was pretty scary stuff. She goes, no. She's like, did you see anything when you were moving it? I'm like, no, I was just focused on moving it. And she's like, well, the whole time you guys were moving that branch, there was, I think, four or five walls of black moving around in the tree. I'm like, what? And she's like, really dark objects moving, going from tree to tree. I'm like in the tree? She goes, no, on the ground. I'm like, well, how big do you think they were? And she was like, big. She was like a black wall moving through the tree, like towards you guys.
Wow.
So that really freaked me out. So she said there's about 4 or 5 of them on either side of the road that would see moving.
Yeah, that's the kind of information you need to know about right away, not after the fact. Have there been any lingering negative effects that you've been suffering from after your encounters?
Well, the only ones, like being, over the coppice in the woods, like I said, every little crack of a branch, every snap of a twig, I turn around and look, expecting to see one of these things standing there or anything like that, but never anything. There for a while after I saw the one behind the car, I kept having dreams about it.
You had nightmares.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't really nightmares. It just played all the time in my sleep. Like I would wake up, I'd fall asleep and I'd be doing the same thing over and over again. I was stuck on like a loop.
It sounds like it affected your girlfriend a lot more severely than it affected you. Did you know of any lingering PTSD or any other lingering issues that she had as a result?
No, the only thing that happened with her is after it happened, we talked about what we saw, and she said it was like we saw a werewolf. And she she refused to watch, like, any werewolf movies or anything like that. Like, she wouldn't watch any Bigfoot shows or anything to do with paranormal or cryptozoology or anything like that. She would not watch.
I can't say I'll blame her.
She would leave the room, or she would, you know, be like, can you please turn this? I'm like, yeah, no, I'll just watch it later.
Have you heard of any strange activity, John, that's still going on in that area?
Nothing really, this is going to sound really funny, but nothing out of the ordinary. Just occasionally, you know, animals will disappear. Actually, the thing that kind of shocked me, a couple years ago, about 2 years ago, my brother was seeing this girl, and she was over at our place one day, and we were flipping through the channels, and we turned on Finding Bigfoot or something like that. We're kind of joking around, kind of half making fun of it. And she goes, John, I need to talk to you real quick. I'm like, okay. She goes, do you believe in that stuff? I'm like, oh, yeah, you know, it's cool, you know. And she goes, did you ever go on London Road? And my jaw hit the floor. I'm like, what did you just say? Evidently, she grew up around that area, too. And I had no idea. And she talks about one time she broke down out there. And she was sitting in her car. It was nighttime. And she was sitting in her car. And she was waiting on her friends to come pick her up. And she was just kind of laying with her eyes half closed. And she said she felt something like walk up and shake the back of her car. And so she thought it was one of her friends messing around. So she clicks on her light, and she says she didn't see anything when she looked around, you know, expecting one of her friends to be there. And so she clicked the lights off and waited a little bit more. And it kept happening. So she's kind of thought it was really weird, so she started getting freaked out. And it turns out that her friends were actually just right up the road, and they were coming down and saw her hazards going. So she goes so they come and see her, and they were like, kind of glad we got here when we did. And she's like, why? She goes, see that? And she's like, what? She goes, well, we were sitting there with her hazard lights on, the lights were off. She goes, her friend was like, yeah, the thing on London Road was on your passenger side. And she's like, wait, what do you mean? She's like, when we pulled up, he said, we saw something black away from your car.
Oh, wow.
She said, yeah. I was like, wait, what? He told me it all again, and she swears up and down that she thinks that the thing on London Road was shaking her car to get her out of the car.
Wow. Yeah, that really makes you wonder what its motivations were if it was doing that.
Like I said, the thing is, I never uttered the word about that to her at all. Like, she came over once and we were watching, like I said, like Finding Bigfoot or something like that. And she brings it up. And I had never talked to her about that before. So I didn't say anything. And she's like, I tried to talk to your brother about this, but he doesn't believe me. I'm like, oh, well, I believe you.
Were there any other encounters that happened to you or anyone that you know you might be able to share?
No, that was really about it. I mean, aside from just all the old stories that, you know, I had when I was growing up, the thing on London Road chased my car and stuff like that.
Well, John, I really want to thank you for coming on and sharing the details of those encounters with us.
Oh, no, thank you. I mean, I'm happy that, you know, I have somebody to listen to me that doesn't think I'm crazy or making something up.
Oh, no, I know better than that. You're definitely not crazy. I hear the crazy word all the time when someone contacts me to report an encounter. I always tell them, no, you're not crazy and you're not alone. It's just unfortunate you had to live through these things, but the past is the past. What can you do?
I just hope my stories spur somebody else to come forward their encounters. Like you said, you're not alone. If one person's seen it, probably more have. So just don't be afraid to speak up. Only we'll figure something out.
Those are really good words. That's one of the things I tell eyewitnesses. It might be painful to talk about it at first, to open up old wounds, but in a lot of cases, talking about it is therapy. Like I said, thanks again so much for your time. Thanks again for sharing that.
Oh, it's no problem at all. I'll keep my ear open, though. If I hear any of the news that's popped up, I'll let you know.
I appreciate it, buddy. Definitely don't be a stranger. Please do keep in touch.
All right. I won't.
All right. Well, thanks again and have a great night.
Yep, you too, man.
Thanks.
All right, buddy.
Bye.